Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Career Uninterrupted. I'm your host, Lochan Narayanan, founder and CEO of Experiences. Our this season has been all about women, career, and parenting. As we explore the interlinkages between these topics at length, it was imperative for us to bring the perspectives of people who are part of this ecosystem, who are supporting this space, and who are actively even in the midst of it. Today, we will be speaking to two very interesting guests in the capacity of them being working fathers, addressing questions around how the role of fatherhood has evolved through generations, navigating stereotypes and biases, and enabling other working parents as organization leaders and more. We have Apoorv Bamba and Ravi Karthik with us today. Thank you, both of you, for being here and for agreeing to do this with me and sharing this journey.
Thank you. Thanks, Sachin.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Luchan.
having us
It's
here.
exciting to be here.
So, before we get started, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourselves. Describe maybe your journey into parenthood, also a little bit about your professional journey for our audience that's listening in, and then we'll dive deeper into some other into more detailed questions.
Apoorv,
I pick Ravi to go first.
we should play rock, paper, scissors. Okay, great. So, currently, I'm based in Bangalore and work in Act FiberNet, which is one of India's largest cable and broadband companies. I have been in the sales and marketing space throughout my career and across a couple of industries. Prior to this, with Flipkart. Before that, with PNG Procter and Gamble. Having lived and worked in Mumbai and in Singapore, and then now in Bangalore. Um, yeah, and interestingly, I've been in this current organization for close to 7.5 years, and that's how old my son is 8. So he doesn't know what work is; he only knows what act is. So that's how closely linked it is. I have an 8-year-old son, Samant, and I am a single, or rather co-parent my son with Aruna, and it's been a fun, interesting journey, both the last 7 8 years, and it's getting more and more fun as we see every day. Proof.
Awesome.
No, no, thanks, Ravi, for actually setting some template for me. That's why I wanted you to go first, because otherwise I could speak in a lot of directions. No, but yeah, I'm a fool. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur, I think, since I figured out what work was. Uh, I run two different education companies, actually co-founded both with my wife. Right, they're called Engineer Spaces and Belong. I have a 5-year-old son. I live in Goa. Again, moved here like a lot of other parents and families during the pandemic when we realized that there's more to life than just being in a city, and especially when we saw me being stuck in a house with nothing much to do, and we thought, okay, this can't be the future. So I think just packed our bags, moved to Goa, thought it will do it for a month, and now we're here now almost 3 years now. So yeah, really enjoying. Otherwise, just yeah, I love traveling. Been in almost 50 countries. Meer's been in 16 of those with us. So yeah, so that's a big part of my journey and my learnings. And yeah, everything from parenthood to entrepreneurship, everything is linked. A strong linkage to travel and exploring things. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving a little glimpse into your lives and a little bit about both your professional and your parenting journey. So I'm going to dive deep into some tough questions. So, or rather, start with one, or what I think is a tough question. So we run programs for working moms for different organizations, and we usually invite their partners in for some of the sessions, etc. And sometimes we do hear things like um, men feel more disengaged or excluded during the initial years of parenthood, especially, let's say, through, of course, through the pregnancy and the first 1 year of parenting or 1 year of having the child, because um, biologically mothers are more connected to their babies, and therefore there is like an interdependency of some sorts. um, and somehow that automatically starts translating into the parental roles, really, how they get defined going forward. What has been your experience in that? How have the first 2 years of raising your child's journey been, which I hear from mothers has been very, very challenging and life
Hmm.
changing for them. How has the journey been for you?
Apoorv, this
Yeah.
time you.
No, no,
No,
I'll
but
go.
you're
I'll
also
go.
closer to
Uh,
the age of 0 to 2, so.
got it. Got it. No, I think. Uh, Sorry, can you still
Yeah.
see me? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
No, yeah. So I think for me, so it was a long question, Lochan. So it takes time to like process the entire question. But yeah, no, but I think there were two phases. One was the pregnancy, and I would definitely say, looking back, I think I could have been more empathetic because I think I'm a very visual person, and I know it's strange. I was seeing the baby, but I couldn't feel or hear the baby, so it was not hitting me for the longest time. Okay, we're going to become parents, and what my wife need at that point of time, and how I could have done better. So definitely things I would have done differently or better at that phase or in that 9 months for sure. But I think I don't know now. It's fortunate, unfortunate, whatever happened. But in our reality, because she had a C-section and she was very, very unwell and weak after Mir was born. So I sort of became, at least physically, the primary parent. So, holding him and just midnight feeds and small things like taking him back to the hospital for, your first few checkups. And, and I heard this, right? I heard this bias from that day. Oh, you're like a mother, right? Like, so that happened to me at least a lot in the first couple of months while she could just get back to her own health. Right. And I think, I don't know if that was the reason or some other reason, but I've always had that primary or like that strong bond with Mir. And so for me, it hasn't changed much from the day he was born to till now, on how I look at him or we don't have that conversation at least between us who's primary, secondary. It's just we are parents, and yeah, I think. But yeah, coming back to what your question was, the first couple of months, I sort of did a lot of the physical aspects, because she was still recovering from the pregnancy. Now that we know, I mean, now we know fancier words like postpartum. And when I say fancy, not because we didn't know anything, that this is what it was that time, right? So yeah, so we now looking back, we did realize that, or at least I realized, I was not aware of so much more that a mother or a mom or a woman goes through. And that moment we just thought, okay, she's not doing well or she's not feeling well. That was all we could muster up with. Right? Yeah, but yes, I think for me, it was just a natural way. I never questioned it. I never thought I was the only one who was doing it, or I just thought this is how it is. Right? So yeah, so that was my journey.
Thanks. Um, yeah, I think similar to Pura, I think the pregnancy part, to be honest, it felt like a series of checkpoints. And genuinely, while you're there for the other person, you are more considerate, you would want to be more present, but there isn't much you do other than being more considerate and otherwise, both physically, emotionally, everything. So that part, I think, I was there for every checkup, we went to the doctor together all the time. But I think that was there. Um, Post, I think during post delivery, even Aruna had a C-section, and post delivery, I think Aruna's mom was came and stayed over for the first couple of months. So honestly, for me, some bit of it got easier, uh, which is the late night or the night feeds, etc. And I am genuinely a morning person, so I would probably pick up the early morning part of it. But the nights for me were much more, to be honest, very comfortable or easier, and because there was one more person around, would help. But having said that, during I mean, within 2 months of pregnancy, Aruna was putting up a performance, and there were rehearsals at her home. So it was work, and she's in theater. And she's a director, so she's putting up a performance. She was at home, so I would come back early from work, be physically present, take care of him, while rehearsals were going on at home and so on. So yeah, I think if I were to look back, I think the post pregnancy was a little harder for the first 3 4 months. Uh, mm, I think I was there as part of each of these visits to the hospitals, checkups, going with Arna or sometimes with Arna's mom and me, so on. But I don't think, honestly, the physical effort or physical challenges that the mother goes through was anything close to what we did or what I did for sure. I think as much as possible, I was just there. And I don't think that changes, or I don't think that that necessarily extrapolates to how the relationship is now, or it has evolved over a period of time. Because the first few, maybe I was not almost needed as much for the first 3 4 months, 5 months, because there are more people at home. But after that, it was just the two of us, and then continuing. And no, I think I'm fully involved in with Samant. Call him Sam. So fully involved with Sam in terms of everyday work, relationship, bonding, travel, cooking. So I think there isn't. I think that doesn't necessarily extrapolate, but I'm fully involved right now. At least that's what I feel.
Right. So, how do you guys, and I know, okay, so I'm being careful on how I frame certain questions as well, also, so that I'm not pandering to, stereotypes. And I know Apoorv will be like, I hate that word. So, but is there a natural division to the parental responsibilities? Is it like, okay, these are things that I'm good at, and let me pick this up, and these are things that you can pick up, or is there like an explicit stated thing that, okay, you do this and I will do this? How does that really happen? And to be more to drive in the point, to say how much of it is really driven by the expectations or the societal roles or any of those stereotypes that we see. Does it come from there, or is it, did you have to fight any of those? I'm just throwing in a few additional points there.
Yeah, so I think I'll tell you a quick anecdote, and I didn't even know this, like maybe till like 1 month back or 2 months back. I was having a conversation with my parents, and I'll connect it to your answer, right? Actually, I found out that my mom went back to work first than my dad did when I was
Wow.
born.
Okay.
And this is like in the Stone Age, right? When things were very different.
Yeah.
Right. So I think so for me, and I think we spoke about this when we were speaking offline, right? For me,
Yeah.
I don't even know what societal norms were, or they are. Like I know they exist in movies or someone else's house, but for me, there has been no sort of, okay, this person is the primary person, or this person supposed to do that. And also, I think in Vidushi, in my case, because we both were running the same company, so again, they were always sort of a sense of co-ownership. The co-word has always been key in everything we have done. All right. And I think so, yeah. So I think when it came to me, or when it came to parenting, I think what I would have liked to have more explicit conversations, but I think it just flowed. That okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this, you're doing so. We sort of expected things to just flow in a certain matter, and it did. And I think a lot of times when things didn't go our way, and then we would have that conversation, but okay, but whose responsibility is this part actually? Right. And I think that also came from just because our work involves traveling and she couldn't travel. And I was doing more of the traveling in the initial part. So that's where we had to have conversations. But I think every time when we were home or in the same city, I think it was just fluid, and it never felt like we were dividing work. It almost felt like it was just flowing together. And I think certain parts, just the last part, that certain parts we did pick it up in what is our strength. Like she's very peculiar about food. So she wanted to make sure he's eating certain things correctly. Right. So and I'm more about the activity person, like to moving around, mobility. So I think that we just picked up because that just comes naturally to us. Right. So meal time would go to her, playtime would come to me. But again, we didn't have a conversation one day. Okay, today we will decide. You're going to do this. I'm going to do this. Right. So yeah. So that's how it happened for us at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of similar. I don't think there were necessarily explicit conversations saying that you would do this, I would do this, and this works and this doesn't. It just flowed I think there were situations where I had a more structured work hours, that I would go to office, and also that I would have a decent amount of travel, while her work hours were more flexible. And hence, because of that, whichever side the ship would fall, who would need to pick whatever things up, it would work that way. So I don't think, as Apoorv mentioned, I don't think there was any explicit, here is your role, here is my role, etc. I do see this though, in rather, we do kind of hear about this. This comes up when you are in the larger family gatherings, in terms of the kind of questions being asked, and what are you doing, and oh, you're going, and who's taking care. And in that context, yes, this comes up, and it feels very jarring. But other than that, when it's just two of us or it's a few of us, it just flows that way. Whatever's needed is needed.
Yeah.
So, have you seen a change in the role of fathers evolve? And I know, Apoorv, you do speak about, you have shared about um, the fact that your mom was working, and like right now you just shared, right? So she went back to work before your father did, and at a time when paternity leave was not even a concept, right? Like, not what 4 days, you didn't even get 4 hours. So, and Ravi, maybe the way you've seen your father and father figures, and in and around everyone from that space, how has the role of fathers evolved, and what do you think is the reason or trigger for this change or this evolution? And has this been is this gradual, or is this sudden? Is this our generation that decided we will be different set of, we'll have different we will be different types of fathers, or has it just been gradual over a period of time? What are your thoughts on it?
Uh, I think I would say, I don't know if you can demarcate it by a generation, but definitely I think the involvement has gone up significantly. That and I think that's great actually. I think I read the statistic somewhere that versus, I think, 30 years ago, dads spend more time with their kids, twice amount of time, and so on and so forth. So I don't know, but I think it's definitely gone up. But I would also if I were to look back and say, I think my dad was working, my mom worked on and off. In the periods where my dad was working and my mom was not working, uh, it was just that my mom was present at home and my dad would come back. And hence the roles were kind of divided because of that. And when they would be back, he would play with me, or we would sit and have dinner together, or do some reading together, or whatever, or meet some friends, or go for a walk, or something like that. But the times when both were working, I think it just looks like food will be kept, and if he's there, he would help me eat. So I guess it just became a kind of a circumstance of how things were, and not necessarily these are structured rules. But largely said and done, for large part for me, my dad, that was a person who was more outside home, and my mom was the person who would probably be more inside home. And hence the kind of activities, the kind of things, the kind of conversations, all these things kind of split that way. uh, Now I definitely see that that's both outside and inside home. And given a choice, many of us would probably be more inside home if that we could afford that. But yeah, definitely, I think in
Yeah.
that sense, it's more now. I would definitely say in a particular strata or a particular segment of people, especially the kind of people we move around, or the kind of organizations some of us may be privileged to work with, there are spaces where dads can be more at home and so on and so forth. But if I take the larger context, I think I don't think it's changed that much. It's still getting better. I don't think it's changed that much. It's probably just a slow improvement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apur, what's been, I mean, for you, it must have been like, okay, yeah, this is normal in our
No,
families,
so I
right?
think that's what I was thinking about. And I think there are two things, right? I think there was, and I'm talking about a generation before us, like our parents' generation, right? And I think there are two things. One is intentional, the other is circumstance. So I think it's not even about fatherhood, it's about gender now. And I know there's a totally different conversation to be had, but
Yeah.
I think the first data you will have to look at is how many women were working at that point of time.
Yeah.
Right. So if largely if Indian women who became ended up becoming mothers were anyways homemakers, right? So then that became their primary role. Maybe the fathers had good intentions of being active fathers, but couldn't. And yes, certain fathers never had that intention because they never saw that as their role also. Right. So I think it's a conversation for me is then what would they have done differently? That's what I always think about. Like if like a father really wanted to be an active father, at that point he can't just leave his job and say I'll work remotely. That's not possible, right? And the mother by then has sort of lost confidence, doesn't even know where to start working, or have never worked in her life. So how do you balance that out, right? Right. And so yeah, so that for me is the bigger question. Has fatherhood changed, or how have the roles of men and women changed, right? That's for me is there. And for me, because I grew up in a house where both my parents, they're still working. They work harder than I do. They've always been working. Right. So I think it's very much what Ravi mentioned, right? Like one of them would be there. One of them would exist around me at some point of time, meal time, picking me up from a creche, whatever the daycare and things was like. So yes, and it was, I think, based on logistics. Who is closer? Who's getting early from work today, or who's stuck in a meeting later? Right. So yeah. So for me, that was my context. So yeah. So I think yeah. So that's sort of what I wanted to share.
So you brought in a very interesting point of saying I think it's the role of men and women changing. So can I just extrapolate to say okay, having more women in the workforce makes it easier for fathers to be home and and be more involved, or is it having more women in the or your partners in the workforce uh, circumstantially requires fathers to be more involved because you probably today are nuclear families. So is it a space of coming in from uh, exercising your choice and you therefore can exercise that choice, or is it coming from a space of okay, we don't have a choice because both of us need to work and we don't have parents or grandparents or etc., like a larger ecosystem to lean on. So I mean, and of course you could share from your experiences and people around. What do you think is driving this
Yeah.
largely?
Yes, I think I can. I mean, this might go a little off tangent. Sorry, Ravi, were
No,
you
no,
going
no.
to
Go
answer
ahead.
first? Okay. Yeah, so I think for me, what I second thing Lochan I mentioned is intent to parent. I think people don't talk about it enough, right? In the Indian society, it's a given. It's like it's on your CV. It's in your destiny. It's in your journey. You're married, and then you should have a child. I don't know. And once you have a child, you can't actually tell the society, I really didn't want a child because the
Yeah.
child exists.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the intent to parent is so just because there are more women in the workforce, maybe it still doesn't solve the problem. What if, the father or the man, or even the woman or the mother, never really wanted to be a parent? And a lot of times that realization hits after the child is born because that's when it's real. So I think so that intent to parent, this is what I talk about, at least, in our very small circle of parents that we have is why did we become parents? Right? Obviously, it doesn't change it, but maybe having the answer to that will help us parent better. Right? So that intent to parenting is very, very important. And I know it might sound odd to people. What do you mean intent? Like once you are a parent, you have to parent.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, but that intent to parent I sometimes feel is missing, and even in our generation. So you're actively there, but you're seeing it as a task. You're not seeing it as something you enjoy doing. Yes, it's annoying to be a parent. It's like six emotions in 1 minute, right? But I think if you have the intent, you will enjoy the journey at the end of it, and then you'll figure out a way. No matter if both the partners are working, one of them is working, both are unemployed, whatever the construct is, you will figure it out. I think for that's how I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Apoorv because I think there have been examples, maybe even in Apoorv's case or many of our cases or people we know, even in the previous generation, the intent to parent came out in whichever way they could express it. So it's not necessarily having more women in the workplace, but so that in that sense, intent to parent is extremely important. And yeah, Purv is right. The days are long, but the years are short. So when you are a parent, it is it's race against the clock. But I think that one part is for sure. Having more women in the workspace, uh, doesn't I feel doesn't necessarily make it easier for dads to be more make easier for dads' lives. I think the space also needs to change, and that is extremely important. So maybe it makes for more easier conversations with people around you who are more parents, and that is a nice support group or a kind of conversations you can have, which could be relatable. But I think there's much more intent to make dads' lives easier needed than otherwise.
So you bring in an interesting piece of saying it doesn't necessarily make dads' lives easier, and I'm sure there will be one segment of people up in arms and saying, "What do you mean? They have every, they just get up, go, and it's just an easier life, or seemingly so." But uh, in today's time, especially when work schedules are also crazy for everybody, you don't have the like a parent's time of like a 9 to 5, and you know that your father will be back home at 5:30 or 6 or X
Yeah.
hour or whatever it may be for most of the folks, right? All a lot of those things are not the same. You're in different spaces, you're in different environments, you're changing roles, you're changing organizations, all of that's happening for everyone. Now, the minute we think about men who have a high intention to be a parent and therefore be more involved in raising their child, how easy is it to do so, given how the workspaces are today?
Okay. Okay. So first, let me clarify. As a guy, my life is way more simpler and easier in the society or community or at workspace than for any woman in the larger context. So that is not the intent. But see, a couple of examples both at work and outside. Um, in my apartment complex, there's a mom's group. There's no dad's group. There's no parents group. And I have clearly not been able to make inroads into that group. One. Second is sometimes birthday parties or some catch-ups are arranged at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the evening on a working day. Now it makes it very decently difficult for to go and manage those logistics and so on. Now here is where I think an organization, if it makes it easier to have such conversations, I feel it probably makes helps. Whether it's a kid's birthday party, if it's important to the kid, it's important to the parent, or if it's a parents teachers meeting and you have to go, or suddenly overnight you can't travel for an important meeting. At least it's easier now because work from home is or online is more acceptable these days. But pre-pandemic, it was that much more
Right.
difficult to say no or not be available or say I need to go and talk to drop my kids off or all those conversations. Unless the space enables it, it's difficult with mom or a dad, and it is difficult for a dad to do that also, especially if it's on a regular basis. Sometimes it is on a decently regular basis for me, and it is for many people it will be difficult. I might have an understanding boss, but it's the space that needs to change and not just the boss. So in that sense, so that's what I meant that when I said dads also, I think the space and the conversation need be a little more easier and enabled, which would also help. And in fact, if it helps the dad, it helps the mom, it helps the parents.
Correct. Does it change when you're an entrepreneur, Apoor? You set your own rules, right?
Yeah, I mean, it changes a lot, right? I think entrepreneurs have zero excuse to be bad dads if they're a guy, right? I think that's I look at it like that. I mean, sure, they can say, I mean, Lochan, you're an entrepreneur, right? You can say, but I'm entrepreneurs, you work harder, but I always say you can pick the time you work at, right? Right. So I think, yeah, for me, what Ravi said is actually maybe part of the problem. I think we are part of, maybe next time we should have a traditional dad here, right? Because I think it's the same thing. I think what I really feel is, and I know it, like we are part of a very small group of people or dads or parents, right? And same thing. And Goa is supposed to be a progressive society, right? Where a lot of cool people move here and nuclear families move here. But it's the same thing. Like today was a public holiday and I went on a play date and I'm like the only guy there. right? There are only other mothers, right? Same. So I think, and I they both, maybe the mother's also working, the father's also working, but mothers would, it's seen as the mother's job to bring their kid to a play date. Right. We have a group of all the kids in the school, and yes, there are some other fathers there on the group, but I think I'm like the only father replying to messages. Maybe it's beneath a father to reply on a WhatsApp group, which is mainly, I don't know. I'm also sometimes curious about these things, but do I lose my sleep over it? Not really. Like, no, like I think, but I'm very curious, and I think that's where Ravi and me connected earlier on. Right? I wish I could speak to more fathers because I think that's something I really miss. I do miss. It's not making my life difficult, but it would be very interesting to see how other fathers are. Right. So I would see it as like more of having that benefit than, oh, it will make my life less difficult. Right. So and that sort of also showcases the problem. And maybe there are not enough active fathers out there to make a WhatsApp group. Maybe Ravi and me will have to just chat one on one. Right.
Sure. Or
Right. So yeah.
maybe after this episode, we'll, folks, active fathers, please, you can all DM me and, I'll connect
Yeah.
you and connect
Yeah.
you all.
Maybe we'll just slide into my DMs if you're a father.
Yeah. So
Definitely.